This is a follow-up to the ultradian cycle bipolar, aka Nibbana, the nightmare of the waking dream. Uh, just to kind of tie up any loose ends from that one, things that were referred to, but there are counterparts that were not referred to. So, some of the other symptoms that typically come with rapid cycle bipolar include what they refer to as superstition. This does not mean belief in superstitious things. What this means is attempts to connect things that may not necessarily be connected. The superstition helps lead to or contributes to the formation of delusion. Um, One of the reasons why I embrace logic so much is that it's a lot harder to have superstition if you are aware of the real cause and effect and force yourself to be like habitually, compulsively self-honest. It's a lot less delusional that way, is how I live. Intrusive thoughts, and occasionally, in when I was not aware, but I was becoming aware of the fact that I was experiencing mood swings. For sense of denial is one of the biggest things for a lot of people. That's just you don't notice it, you don't think about it. When someone points out, you're like, nah. And it's not just you don't believe it. It's actually part of it to deny it. Which also, it's easier to notice it when you're focusing on the fact that you're depressed. But if you're kind of skyrocketing or whatever, mood wise, it is difficult to focus to that level, or even to notice or to question, why do I feel so good? You don't want to question why you feel so good. You were just feeling like shit. Now you're feeling good. Embrace it, enjoy it while it lasts, right? And so you don't notice it, you don't think about it. The denial is like a form of superstition and delusion. It's feedback loops. So when I refer to a full course mood swing, the sinusoidal path, in a general sense, every mood swing follows through some aspect. Sometimes the slopes are steep enough that steps may be skipped. And I don't understand myself fully exactly how that works. And maybe they're just blip by so fast I don't notice. So, taking this screen, this is your baseline. This is the elevated, this is the depressed. We will go this way, moving across time. So if you're starting at your baseline, you could be moving downward toward depression. You could be moving upward, right? So for this one, we're going to go to a down, to an up, and back down. That's how it's going to go, okay? So from your baseline, if you're just having a normal baseline day, no stress, no mood swings, just you're there, you're doing your thing, watching some TV or whatever, not thinking about nothing. And you get kind of a weird sinking feeling. The sun's not as vibrant or brilliant, not as energetic, almost like gravity stronger. And as this slide downward, this is called dysphoria. And dysphoria below the baseline is a little different from dysphoria above the baseline, and I'll get to that. So you experience a dysphoria, your mood sours, sinks, however it is that it does. It's not always the same. You reach a point of depression. Now, as I said in the previous one, it could be something where you go down and you just kind of plateau. You hit an elevated plane that is not the bottom. And sometimes it's just whoop. Freaking floor drops out on you, man. Free fall. And it's like that bit in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey where they're just like, falling in the darkness, right? So you get down into the depressed, and when you're in the dysphoria of depression is simply noticing that things do not seem to be right. When you get to dysphoria that begins above the baseline and falls below the baseline, if you have a high point that goes straight to the bottom, which can happen, I'll get to that in a second. So you have a below baseline dysphoria sense of dread, something's not right. The just a dampening of the mood, right? I don't. It's hard to explain if it's like when the cloud crosses over the sun and the light changes, kind of thing. Only it is just an internal thing. That at some point this like thing went from this to this, and so you experience that. You reach a point where you're beginning to focus on the sensation and notice things. You notice how hard things are, or how much energy it takes, how much of a bother, how pointless, whatever. And eventually, your downward trajectory of mood reaches whatever your swing's depth is going to be, and you either stay there for a bit and just languish in the depression, or eventually it begins to look up. Now, if you're on a regular, longer-term thing, you're talking months of not being able to really get out of bed. In the rapid cycle sense, this is usually a couple months or some weeks or something, but you'll hit that down. And you may spend a week going down, and then spend a week at the bottom, and then spend a week coming back up. Just all depends. I don't think there's a particular ratio all the time. Nor is the sinusoidal wave across time a perfect symmetrical form. I'm just using this as an example to make it easy to point out. So when you get stuck at the bottom, or at your mid-plateau or whatever, and maybe you get stuff done, maybe you don't. Maybe you make lists of things. Maybe you eventually get to those lists. Maybe you got a stack of lists. Who knows? You get down there, and eventually that cloud goes away from the sun. Colors become a little more vibrant. Your perception becomes literally depressed with a mood disorder. Your perception becomes depressed. Things are not as vibrant, as focused. You may be focusing on ideas and things, but you may not have like your pull into the high resolution of the room kind of visual brilliance that you might be used to otherwise, or sounds may not be as vibrant, as clear. It's really weird because, like in my case, I've already got tinnitus from playing music and then also from owning guns, and I'm trying to be really, really careful with my hearing. And at the same time, like, I can hear everything in a room like ADD style sometimes, where just every vibration of everything is present, including like, if I'm at work, there's like the motors, the blower fans for the oven, the gas burner, then there's the little sub-vibration of being in town all the time, the dishwasher rumble, the AC, all these different things that are in different ways all around, and people talking, and, like everything. Like, I can, at the same time, hear all of that sometimes. And then other times, I don't hear much of any of that. All I really hear is what's in my head. It's your perception is affected by your mood. Because your perception is the processing of the input, not the actual reception of input from senses. Pausing time. Sorry, teapot went off. Gotta make the coffee. I realized as I was getting my coffee ready, I should explain the concept of the seasons of the mood in this general sense. And this is where the only place that the circular way of envisioning this mood, the orbit or whatever, it's the only place where it doesn't break down. It serves as an analogy, but it's not perfect. Maybe it is, but I don't think it is. So you've got your downswing, you've got your bottom, you've got your upswing, and you got your top of your mood, right? As I've been describing it. You can think of this as a graph or an environment of the mind or whatever. And so obviously the downward mood trajectory, the dysphoria, this is fall, this is autumn, right? The depths of the depression is the winter of the mood. It begins to get better in springtime. The temperature comes up, the birds eventually come out, you start to see buds, things are getting better. That's the spring. So that's your upward trajectory. So once you're in this depression I've been describing, you reach a point where your mood changes. The sun is no longer obscured by clouds. The flowers are beginning to bloom, kind of thing, mood-wise. You move up. This is euphoria. You are coming out of the darkness. And once you cross that baseline, you get into a bona fide good mood. That shit is gone. It's past. Whether that's true or not is a different story, right? So you're moving upward. Now, you could come to a hypomanic, above baseline elevated mood with no major delusion for long period and just be like that for a bit, and this becomes the you that people know. When you're like this, they're like, oh, what's wrong? And when you're like this, you're like, oh, the old you's back. Okay. So you can either go to this or it keeps going up, in which case, basically, if you've ever been on an opiate painkiller before, and it has its use to help you if there's a legit pain that is insanely bad. And really, the pain-killing part doesn't come from the opiate. The pain-killing part comes from the, basically, acetaminophen, Tylenol, by brand name, that is in that pill, along with an opiate that comes in waves of, like, just kind of scouring you of even thinking about it. It just gets you high enough that you don't notice as the Tylenol works. That's really what it does. I mean, there's a little bit of some numbing, but it's, that's... If you've been on them enough, you understand what happens is, once you pass the point of having healed yourself or whatever, that you don't need them. If you got a couple extra and you tend to keep taking them, what'll happen is you begin to have this kind of strung out feeling, and it's the same with any other drug too. The longer you are just on it, you kind of get stretched. It's like Bilbo talking about, he feels stretched thin. That's what the ring did to him, kind of thing. And you can see what it does to Gollum with a lot of time. 300 years, that's a long time. So keep going all the way too far up, and it's the same kind of thing. It gets into too good, too much. Yeah! And at that point, full mania. That's what a maniac is. Full mania is where maybe your connection to reality gets a little severed, a little static, a little something. And usually the euphoria does not last nearly as long. It's the damnedest thing to draw it out as a thing over time and see where this, like, the slope of it, and you draw it in here and you realize that this on the plateau of hypomania is more akin to the longer length of time than this little up and, hit your peak and move back downward kind of thing from full mania, because full mania seldom just lasts. If it feels like full mania is just lasting, you're either only, you're only experiencing the mania, the zoetrope as it were, is only noticing the mania, and you're probably having ultradian episodes where you are also bottoming out and then coming back up and only noting that you are at this point. So it's like your thing on your slider looks like it's just going like this at the top, but really it's hitting the whole thing every single time. And it just at the top, because you can only go so high. You go too high, you get into an emergency free fall, mixed state. You're just basically existing at both points at the same time. It is the most dangerous state to be in as a person individually with any self-willed control. Because if that is the point where you're like, man, I think I'm about to hit the eject button on this feeling, it's a dangerous state. But so you can go super high, or you can hypomanic and ride that plateau. And eventually, okay, there's two ways that this goes. When you are on the hypomania, oftentimes it will dip down to baseline, just enough below to be like, yep, below baseline, and then come back up. Sometimes that's all it is. But if you go higher into mania, the longer it lasts, the more likely you are to experience a genuine dysphoria. And what this is you sense the changing of the mood, as I described before, but in a downward way. The dysphoria of that, above the baseline, is where you start feeling like everything is just a little wrong. You get irritable, irritated, irked at things. And when you think about it, you realize very quickly, if you're doing as I do with the logical and rational approach to it, of habitual logic, so that just it naturally is going to go that way, even if the feels and the mood's got some other weird freaking hurricane wind going on in your head. That you can recognize and be like, oh yeah, no, that's just me being dysphoric and irritated because nobody did anything wrong. And that is a thing that can, of all the things, I think that is the single easiest thing that I've been able to get a handle on is my dysphoria. I've personally considered it to be one of my worst traits. To just periodically be like, you know what, that's not good enough. Like, that's terrible. But I did away with this shit like in my early 20s. It was when as soon as I got the first thing that was like, what can I do about this besides just medication? It's like, you can work on not being dysphoric when you're dysphoric, not getting pissed or irritated, recognizing the mood, because once you recognize the mood, even there, it has less effect, generally speaking, unless you consciously take an inward move that's going to result in the balance being upset, as I did. Generally speaking, the natural tendency of whatever it is that causes the mood to swing, because a part of the superstition as well is to ascribe events to it. Now, it's entirely possible that me overcoming anxiety and asking a question directly coinciding with an enormous bottom-out free fall into the bottomless abyss of depression are completely coincidental, because bipolar just does what it does, and it has nothing to do unless what it was leading to with its own swing caused me to go into a behavior that happened to be leading to that as well. I don't know. That's a whole other, like, subconscious meta of personal responsibility and or free will to suggest that my subconscious would cause me to do things like that. At the same time, one of the symptoms of bipolar, especially in mania, is tendency to risky behavior. So speeding or doing, risky shit or whatever. Things that are just, I don't know how to explain it. Personally, I don't know how to explain it. You've probably seen something like it because it's even getting pissed off, and I got to be real careful what I say and how I say it. Sometimes. How do I manage it? Well, here's one I haven't done yet today. I take daily vitamins. I tend to my diet. Try and keep myself as nutritionally resourced as possible. Not in an overfilled way, but in a making sure that my daily consumption needs are fulfilled. And part of that involves this. These vitamins, 2 of which are vitamin C. Vitamin C is good for your immune system. If you are under stress, your immune system can fail. So this is good for your immune system. The other thing is vitamin C is natural energy and a slight antidepressant effect. I hate swallowing pills. How else I deal with it is maintaining a rough baseline of a chemical buildup of an anticonvulsant. Periodically also, while re-upping this dose, includes an anti-anxiety component. This basically, by keeping a rough low baseline in my system, I can monitor how the feeling of this, you could call it the Zen. It's just a little sense of whether or not that threshold is met. And as long as that minimal threshold is met, the mood is not going to tend to swing. If the threshold is exceeded significantly, for sure, it can swing. You don't want to take too much of your mood stabilizer, nor do you want to not take enough of your mood stabilizer. Missing doses is also not good because the buildup can drop. I drink some coffee in the morning. I take the collagen stirred in. Again, nutritionally, trying to just keep myself healthy regardless. That helps. The healthy body, healthy mind, and vice versa. And I do videos like this, working through and explaining for others as well. Maybe someone else sees this and thinks, oh, I didn't realize that was the thing I had going on, but now that I think about it, that's stuff I experienced. Or I know somebody that might be like that. Now I understand a little better. Thing you will also see, not so much in this one because I've paused, but, and also because it's not moving today at this time the way it was moving last night when I made the other one. If you go back and rewatch the previous video about ultradian cycle bipolar, you will see a full course swing occur throughout the time frame of that video. Oh yeah. Work was okay, but the money was not good, and it's becoming stressful not having enough money. So that was why I decided to document the mood swing after the majority of the ultradian consequence of the psychic sensor thing was pretty much past. That it would be time to explain what that all means. I think the way to look at it is if the kiosk is kiosking and the kiosking involves plummeting, that's probably something to do with depression. If it involves the abyss or the depths or any of that, it's depression. If it involves a beach or a surface that's a baseline, if it involves flying or the use of the burning sword of truth, that would be probably more into the elevated half of the thing. Also, though, there are times when things like auras and flames assume two colors at the same time. That could be mixed state as well. It's like a key to that. So anyways, that's the end of this video. I hope this has been enlightening or, I don't know, some insight. What it's like inside of my head all day, every day. What it's like inside a few other people's heads here, there, everywhere, from time to time, all day, every day. The shit that people go through that nobody knows about. And it's not even like trauma-induced. This is just the way that I am. It's fun. So, thank you for your time, and have a good day.